Good morning and good afternoon. Welcome to another episode of Before Coffee. It is Monday, so let's see if anything happened over the weekend. I hear a lot of explosive things have occurred, and also a big annual meeting is coming up. So let's go ahead and go over our headlines. Today on Before Coffee. State of the Union, the Council President who stunned Brussels.
And we report on NRA malfeasance.
What is Davos and why is it important? Your guide to the World Economic Forum's annual meeting.
And we cover an evacuation for a volcano in Indonesia.
Olive oil scams are proliferating. How do you spot a fake extra virgin?
Those stories and more for Mucking Fun Day, which is National Hat Day. January 15th, 2024 on Before Coffee.
All right, our first news story. Coming out of Brussels, this is actually a story from the 12th of January, but I'm covering it today because this week, EU Council President Charles Michel announced that he would resign to run for a seat in the European Parliament. When Ukrainians listen to European leaders talk about their support for the war effort, they have all reason to be irritated by the lack of action, if irritated is the right word when you're in a bloody war of attrition with Russia. A €50 billion EU aid package to help Ukraine pay its bills over the next few years is being held up by Hungary, while a goal to provide the country with 1 million ammunition rounds by March is unlikely to be reached and by a wide margin. This week, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz rang the alarm bells. With €17 billion, his country is the second biggest donor of military aid to Ukraine after the United States, and if Europe wants to prevent a Russian victory, his colleagues better step up to the plate, he said. As important as our German contribution is, it alone will not be enough to guarantee Ukraine's security in the long term. I therefore call on our allies in the European Union to step up their efforts in the support of Ukraine. In any case, the arms deliveries for Ukraine planned by the majority of EU member states to date are too small. Who was Scholz talking about? He didn't name any names, but France, Italy, and Spain only gave a combined €1.6 billion in military aid to Ukraine, according to data by the Kiel Institute. The man in charge of coordinating EU policy, facilitating decision-making, and providing European solidarity is Charles Michel, a president of the European Council representing the nation's governments. His job is to set the agenda, find compromises, and unblock stalemates. This week, the former Belgian Prime Minister announced that he would run for a seat in the European Parliament, which, if successful, would see him leave his current role several months early. The Brussels bubble was stunned by Michel, I don't know if I'm saying it's Michael, himself sees it as almost a natural decision. Not being a candidate would have been a form of evasion. Being a candidate means taking responsibility. For 4 years, at the heart of the European Council, I took part in the fundamental decisions for 450 million European citizens. So, it's normal to be accountable, to explain decisions and what we want for the future. Many people were confused. In this particular case, this matters because it triggers a whole chain of reaction which we have seen that has created a lot of agitation in Brussels and elsewhere in European capitals, because the departure from the post of President of the Council leaves the position open theoretically for about 6 months, Doru Frontescu, CEO of the founder of the research platform EU Matrix, said to Euronews State of Union. That's a very difficult plan, very complicated at the time right after the European elections. It is when the European leaders need to agree on the composition of the next European Commission, the 2 next posts, but also the next legislative agenda, the priorities. And in this particular case, the departure of Charles Michel would also create a sort of power vacuum and legal vacuum because in the absence of another person that will take up the presidency of Council, by default, the chair would go to the Prime Minister of the rotating presidency, in this case, Mr. Viktor Orban of Hungary, who is basically the only champion of denying everything everyone wants to do, which, as we know, has a difficult relation with Brussels over time. And this is what concerns some of the EU politicians, which are trying to find a solution to this not to happen, he added. Meanwhile, Italian Foreign Minister Antonio Tajani, a former president of the EU Parliament, suggested this week to merge the position of Council President and Commission President to make EU decision-making more efficient. But for Frantescu, It would require a change of treaties that cannot be done just like that, by the decision of political leaders. But the far right expected a surge in June EU election. Could Michel's move be designed to limit the damage for Liberals? I think the Liberals certainly do need some sort of element to make their campaign more positive towards the European elections, because now they're stuffing in the polls. Projections show now that if elections were to be held this week, they would lose some seats there, which also is the case for the other political parties at the center, Francescu said. The way it looks now, the electorate is moving towards the right. Nationalists are projected to gain a substantial amount of seats, which would indeed change the pattern of formation of a majority in the next parliament, especially on some specific policies, he also said. This was an article from Euronews by Stefan Grobe. So, it's looking spicy there in the European Union politics barrel. We'll only see what happens in the coming days of people making decisions that, I do see the threat of Hungary being in charge, because they will probably just put on a bunch of things that, let's make gay marriage illegal in the EU or something. I don't know. It's Hungary. They're just completely opposite to all of the progressive ideals or liberal ideals of most of the countries in the EU. So it's really weird that they're going for this completely backwards ideology, in my opinion. And your story, I guess.
All right, so more mucking fun day. I mean, we are mucking into the stories, wading hip deep into them, as it were, sometimes. And here's a story on the National Rifle Association, not the National Recovery Act, if you thought the NRA meant something else. And this is from ProPublica, one of our favorite papers, nonprofit who digs and digs and digs. Secret recording shows NRA Treasurer plotting to conceal extravagant expenses involving Wayne LaPierre. Audio obtained by The Trace, which is another news organization, and ProPublica reveals in time the gun lobbying group enacted a plan that would conceal payments for fancy hotels, limousines, and other luxury expenses connected to its longtime CEO for a decade. This is from the Mike Spies of The Trace. At a meeting of June 2009, the treasurer of the National Rifle Association worked out a plan to conceal luxury expenses involving the chief executive Wayne LaPierre, according to the audio of a meeting obtained by The Trace and ProPublica. The recording was known to New York's Attorney General, who is pursuing the NRA and LaPierre over a range of alleged financial misdeeds. It shows in real time the NRA's treasury enlisting the group's longtime public relations firm to obfuscate the extravagant costs. Another expense to cover fraud. Captured on the tape is talk of LaPierre's desire to avoid public disclosure of his use of private jets, as well as a concern about persistent spending at the Beverly Hills Hotel by a PR executive and close LaPierre advisor. During the meeting, which took place in Alexandria, Virginia, office of PR firm Ackerman McQueen executives agreed that Ackerman would issue a platinum American Express card to Tyler Schropp, the head of the new head of the NRA's nascent advanced division, which was responsible for bringing a high dollar contributions from wealthy donors. So I guess waste money to get money. I don't know. Ackerman would then cover the card's charges and bill them back to the NRA's under nondescript invoices. It's really the limo services and the hotels that I worry about, William Winkler, Ackerman's chief financial officer, said. He's going to need it for the hotels especially. This is stuff that was heard on the recording. The use of the Ackerman American Express card, according to a report by New York Attorney General Letitia James, expert witnesses non-profits skirted internal controls that existed to ensure proper disclosure and regulatory compliance and prevent fraud and abuse at a nonprofit. As a result, outside of a tiny group of NRA insiders, everyone was in the dark about years of charges by Schropp, who is still in the head of the nonprofit's advancement division, for luxury accommodations, including regular sojourns to the Four Seasons and the Ritz-Carlton. The NRA, in response to the report, was rife with inadmissible factual narratives and permissible interpretations and inferences and improper factual and legal conclusions. Boy, there's a lot of syllables in that response. You know, it's like, could have cut about 15 syllables out of that response. It would have sounded. We didn't do it. Let me just say that. We didn't do it. James' investigation into the NRA began in 2019 after the Trace, in partnership with the New Yorker and later ProPublica, reported on internal accounting documents that included a culture of self-dealing at guns rights group. Self-dealing at the gun rights group. In 2020, James sued the NRA and LaPierre, who presided over the organization for 3 decades, over claims of using nonprofit resources for personal enrichment, luxury travel, and bloated contracts for insiders, allegations that the parties deny. The attorney is seeking financial restitution from the defendants and was until last week petitioning for LaPierre's removal, which was preempted on Friday when LaPierre announced he would resign at the end of January. The Attorney General's office was unaware of the audio until it was contacted by the Trace and ProPublica and did not respond to requests for comment. Ackerman, McQueen, and Winkler declined to comment. None of the other individuals mentioned in the story responded to requests for comment. The Guns Rights Group attorney William A. Brewer III said in an email, "The tape has not been authenticated by the NRA, but if real, we are shocked by its content. The suggested contents would confirm that what the NRA has said all along, that there were certain insiders and vendors who took advantage of the association. If true, it is an example of a shadowy business arrangement, one that was not brought to the attention of the NRA board." In the recording, Woody Phillips, who was the NRA's top financial official from 1993 to 2018, and also a defendant in James' suit, did not say why the unusual credit card arrangement was necessary, but at one point he indicated that LaPierre, whose public persona was that of a populist firebrand, had concerned about the optics of using NRA funds for travel on a private jet. "We just have to be careful because Wayne wants to get through this whole year saying he hasn't used private aircraft," Phillips said. In that year's tax filings, he explains nonprofits for the first time would be required to disclose whether they paid for chartered flights for any of the numerous executives and officials listed on the documents. LaPierre, Phillips explained, just doesn't want to be seen getting off a plane anywhere. In the opening statement by Phillips' attorney on January 9th, he said that the NRA's political activities cause real and serious security concerns. To that end, his client always acted in good faith, he said, and the questionable arrangements Phillips helped to devise were not due to a desire for secrecy or to keep information from the NRA and its board, but for confidentiality. LaPierre's attorney spoke of his client's unflagging devotion to the NRA and his dedication to his job. Was he thinking always right? No. He asked, no. Is perfection a standard for leading a nonprofit? No. Okay. But still, you're just taking money and living like a king when you're just supposed to be hitting some nonprofit organization. James' complaint states that LaPierre spent millions of dollars on the NRA's charitable assets for private plane trips for himself and his family. In 2021 deposition, LaPierre said the NRA security has a policy against me flying commercial because of threats, and that the requirement had been in place for a decade for me, or more. In 2009, the NRA did indeed check the box on its tax filing, indicating that it had used first class or chartered travel. The NRA's explanation, which the Internal Revenue Service requires nonprofits to provide, was that charter travel was used on occasions involving multiple events when reduced airline schedules precluded other options. The description became the NRA's standard template going forward. Other nonprofits, such as U.S. Chamber of Commerce, disclosed the names of executives who used a luxury service. At the meeting, according to the source, who was asked not to be identified for fear of retribution. The NRA's sole representative in attendance, was joined by Melanie Montgomery, an executive vice president at Ackerman McQueen, and Hillary Farrell. Then the company's chief operating officer, Winkler from Ackerman, attended via video conference. The recording shows how the NRA used Ackerman, which devised the nonprofit's most prominent messaging campaign, as an extension of itself. The decades-long relationship ended in acrimony and lawsuits. After evidence of the NRA's self-dealing became public in 2019, the NRA's and Ackerman accused each other of financial misconduct, with the gun rights group claiming that the firm filed fraudulent invoices. In 2022, the two entities reached a settlement in which the NRA paid Ackerman $12 million. In the recording in the 2009 meeting, Winkler said he was told that Phillips wanted to route Schropp's pricing expenses through Ackerman McQueen, filing them as a travel job, in quotes, which would to clients with the invoice that was devoid of detail. Well, that was easy, Winkler announced. As far as I'm concerned, we can give Tyler and Ackerman. We can give Tyler an Ackerman Amex, which is an American Express card. This is all quoting the recording, and do it that way. Oh well, that's the way to do it then, Montgomery replied. Yeah, Phillips agreed. That's the easiest way to do it, and for the most part, it's going to be stuff that Gail books because it's stuff with Wayne. Gail Stanford was the consultant who handled Wayne LaPierre's travel. That's Gail they're talking about. That aspect of it's very easy, Winkler said. Phillips later said of Schropp, most of what he'll do like he does here. Where he'll fill out an expense report for us. He'll have cards for that too. Okay, so it goes on for quite a while. This is Mucking Fun Day.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to read you a novel. I'm not going to read a novel to you. You know, it's actually about 4 more paragraphs. But that's it. You get the gist of it. We got a recording of people planning malfeasance to hide their expenses that were extravagant. Because, rich people can't sleep in just a regular bed. They got to have a Ritz-Carlton bed. And because you got to fly, because commercially, somebody might get their ordinary people stuff on you.
Oh, no.
Us ordinary people, we have that. We have cooties.
Yeah,
extreme.
Disgusting.
The rich people cannot tolerate anywhere near them.
If we touch a rich person, we might make them poor. So we have to make sure that they stay as far away as possible from us. Otherwise, they catch poorness.
They are so elite.
This reminds me of a conversation I had, I think, on Saturday, because some friends came over, and we were talking about a lot of things. And one of the things we talked about how one of the problems, at least Europeans see with American culture, is this idea that you have to live above your means. So instead of, I make 20K a year, so I'm going to live a life of somebody who makes 20K a year, I'm going to pretend that I make 40K a year. I'm going to go buy a Tesla. I'm going to go buy a house I can't afford and take a bunch of house loans on it. And that, at least from a lot of the Europeans I talk to, that's their perspective on how Americans go into debt so easily, is because they're living above their means. And it definitely sounds like a lot of politicians use the money, or the government workers, they use the money they get on their job and use it to live above their means, because for them, that's what success is.
Don't confuse
making
the
this
NRA
much money, but having it look like you're making double that or something. It's all about...
They're not at all. These are private organizations. But they're pretending nonprofits when they're not. And they have to file disclosures. This is not government at all. Please don't have... All you Europeans out there, don't think this is a government agency. It's not. Not at all. So just making clear. They're not wasting taxpayers' money. They're wasting their donors' money, and they're lying on their taxes. The state of New York.
But I'm just saying, it's just another thing, right? People like showing that they're making double, look, I know I only make 40K a year, but I'm gonna make it look like I make double that by using all your money to make it look that way. It's all about looking like they're making more money than they're actually doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyways, my story, which is about economics. The World Economic Forum, its annual meeting. It's called Davos, which is, I'm pretty sure it's a villain from Doctor Who, but this is by David Walsh from Euronews Next. The World Economic Forum has held a meeting every year since it was founded in 1971. But why is Davos, and as it is commonly known, so significant? At any time of the year, Davos is unremarkable other than being a popular ski resort high in the Swiss Alps. But for 1 week in January, it becomes the focus of the world's attention as the global elites all converge on a small alpine town for the annual meeting of the World Economic Forum, WEF. Why? To discuss the future direction of life on our planet and the pressing issues of the day. So, what is WEF and what actually happens in Davos and why does it matter? WEF was founded back in 1971 by Klaus Schwab, a Swiss-German economist and professor, in a bid to foster global cooperation on political, social, and economic issues. The aim of the international not-for-profit organization, which is now headquartered in Geneva, was to bring together the public and private sectors to brainstorm solutions to these global problems, something which remains one of its founding principles and speaks to its mission statement, committing to improving the state of the world. So these are the real Illuminati right here. We're a bunch of people. We're going to meet up in a room and discuss. We're going to solve all the problems. The first meeting of the WEF 5 decades ago was held in Davos and has been the center of its annual gathering every year since the resort's name even becoming the common shorthand for the event. Who attends Davos? What do Donald Trump, Greta Thunberg, and Elton John have in common? Superficially, probably nothing at all. But the one thing that unites them all is that they have been previous attendees to Davos. One of the most unique things about Davos is those who attend. While it is often criticized as a talking shop for the world's privileged 1%, like I just said, it is also where people come to try to lobby and influence these powerful elites in order to effect change on a global scale. Typically, you can expect in attendance world leaders, usually the sitting US president, the leadership of the EU and the UN, and so on, but also business leaders and entrepreneurs, prominent thinkers and academics, head of NGOs and charity sector, innovators, the media, civil society, actors, activists, all creeds, even the occasional celebrity. And they're all extraordinarily in one place at the same time, which means unprecedented access to many of the global decision makers. The official guest list is often very exclusive and is made up of around 2,000 to 3,000 participants and speakers, but the meeting itself attracts thousands more to its fringe events. It also is where the companies, or even countries and regions, set up their stalls to sell concepts and services or attract investments. Along the promenade, Davos's main thoroughfare, are what have become known as houses, where companies can rent spaces, often retail outlets which are let out for the week, to set up embassies or outposts to welcome visitors, hold meetings, and so on. Beyond the keynote speeches and panels at Congress Center, the main hub of Davos, this has itself been a prominent hallmark of the annual event. Why go to Davos? One of the founding principles of WEF was to the impartial, independent, and devoid of special interests. But though sentimentalities aside, criticism is never far away in Davos. Given the juxtaposition of competing agendas and the overlapping of political and corporate spheres, WEF is often in the firing line of antagonists who argue it is a malignant force in the world. New York Times economics correspondent Peter Goodman, for one, highlighted in his book Davos Man the contradictions of asking billionaires and elites critics accused of causing the world's biggest problems to find ways to solve them. One of the principal critiques leveled at the event organizers every year, for instance, is the hypocrisy of having the climate crisis on the meeting's agenda while 1 in the 10% participants in 2022 traveled by private jet to get there. Yeah, man, we really need to solve this climate crisis. What can you guys do? We're not going to do anything, but what can you guys do? 99% of you, what can you guys do? Obviously, 99% is a bigger number. Hence, you guys must be doing all the problems, not the 1% of us who are actually doing 70% of the problem I don't understand how math works. I'm just here to tell you guys to fix it, okay? A talking shop for the world, rich and powerful it may be, but Davos is an unparalleled forum for discussion and debate on a global scale. But only discussion and debate, it sounds like. I feel like they don't actually do anything significant, but I'm just being pessimistic. It does have significant achievements to its record over the 50-year history. In 1988, an agreement signed at the meeting, known as the Davos Declaration, was credited with helping Turkey and Greece step back from the brink of an armed conflict. Again, in 1992, Nelson Mandela and the South African President F.W. de Klerk made their first joint appearance together on the international stage at Davos, arguably a significant step towards ending apartheid. The pair won the Nobel Peace Prize the following year. In 2000, the Global Alliance for Vaccines and Immunization, Gavi, was launched at Davos and has since improved vaccines for millions. Since its creation, has contributed to the vaccination of 760 million children worldwide. So there's just a few things that they have actually done and succeeded at doing because they meet every year since 1971. I'm wondering if there's smaller things they've done. You know, there's probably a bigger list, but it's smaller things like, oh, they helped, this one country fix their economy, something like that. But it's not completely pointless, but it does come off as very pretentious, that these 2,000 to 3,000 lucky attendees get to decide what my life is going to be next year, in a way. How are we going to solve this? Well, we talked about it, and then we'll solve it in about 5 years. Like most things, it takes time. So there's your info on the Davos meeting and your story.
All right. And of course, those are the real people that are deciding things, right?
Yeah. They're the Illuminati, man.
Illuminati, there we go. The real Knights Templars. They're just not ceremonial anymore. Well, they are, but way deep dark. You'll never see it. Well, a short story we have here, but it's a short story, but it's fraught with things I can mispronounce.
Nice.
So we'll have plenty of that. We have a volcano spewing in Indonesia. This is from Associated Press reporter, and here we go with things I'm gonna mispronounce. Rianus Beluto, from reporter's name from Associated Press. I did not just sneeze. Excuse me. And Indonesia evacuated from about 6,500 people on the island of Flores after Mount Loatobi Laki volcano spewed thick clouds of brownish ash for the past days, authorities said on Monday. No casualties or major damage have been reported so far. But we just like reporting on the fact that Earth really don't care about our plans. The eruptions of East Nusa, here we go again. The eruptions in East Nusa Tenggara province are part of a hot gas spills that have become more frequent in recent days. The 1,584 meter, which is 5,191 feet, mountain is one of the twin volcanoes, the Loatobi Laki and the Loatobi Puriumpuan. I bet you that when I pronounce that correctly, it sounds really pretty. These are both in the Flores Timor district. Won't be long now. The volcano 40 times this Sunday, with columns of hot clouds rising 500 to 1,500 meters, which is 1,600 to 4,900 feet. It's way up there, into the air. Residents in villages nearby were taken in by relatives or brought to evacuation centers. Authorities raised the volcano's alert status to the highest level last Tuesday. Officials urged the local community as well as visitors and tourists to stay away from the 4-kilometer or 2.5-mile radius around the eruption zone and be aware of the potential for cold lava surging into rivers upstream from the peak in case of intense rain. Loatobi Laki is one 120 active volcanoes in Indonesia, an archipelago of 270 million people. A lot of people don't know that. The fourth most populated country in the world, Indonesia. The country is prone to earthquakes and volcanic activity because it sits along the Ring of Fire, a horseshoe-shaped series of seismic fault lines around the Pacific Ocean. Meanwhile, on the island of Sumatra, Indonesia's Mount Merapi, that was actually kind of easy. Meanwhile, on the island of Sumatra, Indonesia's Mount Merapi erupted again on Sunday for the second time since December, spewing smoke and ash high into the air, but no casualties were reported. At least 100 residents were evacuated since Friday. What is the third most popular country in the world? Populated. Before Indonesia and after China and India. Actually, pretty easy. You were born there.
Oh, anyway, really? It's the U.S. Wait, so that means Indonesia is not that much. I thought Indonesia was close to 1 billion.
Well, 270 million it says here.
Oh, okay. Because I know the U.S. hit 300 million, I don't know, back in 2010 or something.
We're 350 with intermittent pandemics, birth surges and immigration,
and,
mostly immigration.
COVID deaths and all that.
Oh, at least it's old fools that are dying of it. Mostly. He's like, I won't get sick. I'm special. Okay, die.
Hey, at least you think you're special.
Wow. Everybody's got to be special. After all, in the United States, we're both all special and we're all equal, which is completely opposite of each other. Okay. That's what we think. We're special and we're equal.
Yeah.
I'm a special person. I have special rights that nobody else can touch. No, you don't.
No, you don't.
Oh, you have, moron. Don't you get that? All right, that's you. I'm getting on my soapbox.
Our short story there. Well, hopefully everyone in Indonesia is okay. I'm sure they're used to it. Because they're in that, what do we say? What do we call it again? The circle of fire.
Nobody there but the thrill seekers and the seismologists.
Yep. Okay, speaking of nothing to do with volcanoes, let's talk about olive oil. This is from Alessio Del Ana on Your News Culture. That's right, olive oil may not be olive oil. You may be drinking something else or putting that in your pan on your salad because there's a huge olive oil scam proliferating all over. And we're going to tell you how you can find out the real oil versus the fake oil. Olive oil shortages and skyrocketing prices have created the perfect breeding ground for fraudulent producers. If you order extra virgin olive oil at a restaurant these days, you better check the label carefully. According to Europol, selling fake olive oil has become a common practice. The warning came after authorities seized 260,000 liters of counterfeit product in coordinated raids across Italy and Spain in November. Less than 2 months later, around 50 restaurants came under investigation for the same reason, in Rome, sparking new alarms. How do you tell if an olive oil is authentic? Some fraudsters are substituting the precious liquid gold with much cheaper seed oil. Seed oil is transparent, so they color it with chlorophyll to add the green tints, and use carotenoids to obtain yellow traits. This creates an olive oil-ish color. However, even if they look similar, big differences remain. Seed oil has no flavor or smell, while olive oil is never tasteless. It can be more or less sweet, bitter, or zesty, but will never be tasteless, food science producer Maurizio Servilli tells Euronews. Anyone who has tried olive oil at least a couple of times would be able to tell the difference. It is a polyphenol that gives it a peculiar taste. It's also very fatty. I don't know if, I think some seed oil isn't very fatty, it's more protein based. So, that's another way to tell, I guess. The scam may be a bit hard to spot if seed oil gets mixed with some actual olive oil. That's true. In these cases, simple analysis can unmask the fraud, like the fatty acids composition test or the sterol composition, as well as the spectrophotometric constants, says Professor Savelli. Okay, let me just go get a spectrometer here so I can test my olive oil. It's actually legal in some countries to sell this type of blend, but the amount of olive oil in the bottle needs to be clear on the label, and the product cannot be called olive oil. Other scams use a mix of olive oil and lampante oil, which is called this because of its historical use as fuel in oil lamps. It's a lower quality olive oil, unsuitable for consumption due to its high acidity. That should be illegal, and anyone who's doing that should be put in jail. When buying and ordering extra virgin olive oil, always vet out the information on the bottle. Make sure there's a date and location for the harvest. Check if you can scan a QR code to trace the production chain, and look up for seals from a third-party certifier, tester, or consortium like DOP or IGP. The most advanced oil consortiums use blockchain systems for traceability. Sabina Petrucci, an Italian olive oil producer. But she adds the checks are never enough, and consumers should be made more aware of the existence of such traceability tools. Fake oil schemes are spreading rapidly because of severe global shortage. Production has collapsed in the last couple of years, says Cervilli. In 2023 only, we lost 20 to 25% globally. That is a lot. Okay? Doesn't seem like a lot, but like that's a lot. Okay? The main culprit is extreme drought in the Mediterranean, which we have talked about before on this show. It is dry, there's no water. It is dry. A region that accounts for nearly 90% of the world's extra virgin olive oil output. Spain, Greece, Italy, Tunisia, were all hit. This year might be even worse. Water resources are running extremely low. And then there's a picture of an olive tree in the middle of a wildfire in Portugal. It sent prices soaring. Standard extra virgin olive oil used to cost between 3 and 5 per liter at the supermarket. Now it's between 10 and 12. It's made it much easier for scammers to sell their projects, with the complicity of dishonest restaurants who know what they're buying, according to Cervilli. Ooh, wow. She's coming for the frickin' restaurants. They're giving you fake olive oil. But now it's becoming more powerful because restaurants don't pay for the current olive oil prices. That's right. They're just paying whatever. Hell, this is cheaper. It's actual lamp oil. Okay, who cares? Put the lamp oil. Delicious. I just can't believe this is happening. But watch out for your olive oil. If you make a lot of pasta, make sure you're getting the good stuff. I'm going to go check my olive oil now because I'm worried now that we've been using fake olive oil this whole time. So there's your culture segment on olive oil. Food is culture. Watch your olive oil. If I say olive oil any more times, I'm going to have to start taking shots.
Yeah, I thought it was a story about Popeye's girlfriend.
No, not this time.
Well, they've been dealing with fake olive oil in the United States for years. I've never really trusted those, genuine. That's the thing about Greece, man. There's olive trees everywhere. You'd think it would be cheap.
But not all of those are oil-producing olives. Some of them are olives you're supposed to actually eat, because there's olives that you shouldn't eat because they're only for oil.
If you squeeze them hard, they'll give you some more. The same history, 1842. In 1842, Saint Mary MacKillop, who was the first Australian beatified by the Roman Catholic Church, and the first Australian to be recognized as one of the saints, was born in Melbourne. In 1844, the University of Notre Dame, founded in Indiana by the Congregation of the Holy Cross, was officially chartered. That's right, it's not Notre Dame. I don't care what you French want to call it. It's Notre Dame. Because it's in Indiana, and they're not going to pronounce it your French way.
Yeah, that's
the way
true.
We're Americans, motherfucker. 1870. The donkey appeared as a symbol of the U.S. Democratic Party in a Thomas Nast cartoon. In 1896, American photographer Matthew Brady, known for his portraits of politicians and images of the American Civil War, died alone and virtually forgotten in a hospital charity ward in New York City.
Oh, that's lovely. Thanks for that. Virtually forgotten.
Okay, virtually forgotten. Well, here it is.
We didn't forget him.
28 years later, we're talking about him. That doesn't make him virtually. That's like when they say Mark Twain died penniless. Mark Twain died penniless. And I was a comedian a long time ago. I said, actually, what the hell are they complaining about? That's perfect timing.
Yeah, exactly. Nothing left over.
Yeah, what do you need money for? You're dead. Dying penniless is your goal.
And you just make a bunch of family drama because everyone's trying to fight for your freaking will, you know? If you don't have any money, they're like, oh, okay.
Let's honor that guy who blew his fortune. Did it up right, he did. That's how I see it. Anyway, 1909, yeah, he squandered his fortune trying to get rich. Why the hell not? He didn't do anything for any heavy labor. He just wrote on a piece of paper. You know?
Yeah.
I'm just saying. It'd be more tragic if a guy like worked on a railroad for 40 years, retired 5 minutes later, and died with a big old pot of money. That would really be tragic, wouldn't it?
Yeah, he would never got to use it.
Worked hard all of his life, never got to use that fortune, never got to squander it like Mark Twain and Matthew Brady probably did. Matthew Brady, who took so many, who's virtually forgotten. Don't forget that now.
Well, we're talking about him, you know.
What a poor use of adjectives. 1909, American jazz drummer Gene Krupa was born in Chicago. He was the guy, of course, jazz drumming. He ain't like regular drumming. You're not just keeping time. 1919, Polish-born German revolutionary and agitator Rosa Luxemburg, co-founder of the German Communist Party, was arrested and murdered in Berlin for fomenting a communist uprising known as the Spartacus Revolt. Well, I got to hand it to the communists. They know how to name a revolt. Also in 1919 on this day, and an unrelated thing to anything in Poland, I've heard about this recently. Imagine dying this way. A storage tank collapsed in Boston, sending more than 2 million gallons of molasses flowing through the cities of the North End. The Great Molasses Flood, it became known, damaged and killed 21 people.
That's too many people.
Grandma died in the Great Molasses Flood in 1919. Grandpa, you're making that shit up.
No, he's not. Even I've heard about that Great Molasses Flood. Even I've heard about that.
These are the days of the internet. They locked up Grandpa for telling this bullshit story back in 1975. Anyway. Then he spent the rest of his days in the home for making up the molasses story. Thank you very much. At least the internet prevents that crap.
Look it up. It really happened.
1967 on this day, the first Super Bowl game was played. It wasn't called the Super Bowl at that time. As the Green Bay Packers defeated the Kansas City Chiefs 35-10. Both teams could play this year. They're both in the playoffs. And, of course, Green Bay famously, I don't have my Packer stuff yesterday, destroyed the Cowboys. Destroyed. Oh, my God. It was like, I think the United Nations got involved at halftime. Had to send in people for relief. It's like, oh, my God. The Cowboys
this is a war crime right here.
They're thinking of taking away their franchise. It was such a bad defeat. The score doesn't even indicate the carnage. In 1974, the American television series, speaking of carnage, 1974, the American television series Happy Days, a nostalgic comedy set during the 1950s and 60s, premiering on ABC. The carnage remark was sarcasm. 2001, Wikipedia, the free internet-based encyclopedia that operates under the open source management style, debuted. It was founded by Jimmy Wales and Larry Sanger. And people will never remember their names, just like Matthew Brady.
Yeah, right.
Which we
keep saying his name, we'll never forget it.
The most ironic sentence I've ever read in my life. 2009. I remember this day. I know exactly where I was when this happened. On this day in 2009, U.S. Airways Flight 1549, piloted by Captain Chesley Sully Sullenberger III, landed in the Hudson River after the plane flew into a flock of Canada geese shortly after takeoff, resulting in severe damages to the plane's engine. There were no fatalities. I remember watching this live with a bunch of Secret Service agents because this was right before Obama's inauguration, his first one. So I was down by the Anacostia River with a bunch of Secret Service agents watching this going, that's going to crash. You know, they're like all wide-eyed. Everybody stops working.
Isn't that the movie? Like, isn't that a movie too? They made it into a film?
Yeah.
With
You were 15 at the time, or not quite 15.
I wouldn't have known it was even going on. So
Anyway, the most famous pilot in America, Sully Sullenberger.
yeah.
And other featured events. In 1759, the British Museum opened to the public. That's right. Where are we going to pull this stuff we stole? We're going to open a museum.
In a museum.
Established by this is before I think a lot of their looting of the pyramids, right? Established by an act of the Parliament in 1753, the British Museum, which counts among its world-renowned antiquities and archaeological holdings, the Elgin marbles and the Rosetta Stone, opened to the public on this day in 1759. We got some loot and we're going to display it, by golly. Also famous birthdays, besides Martin Luther King, which is the most famous birthday today. Martin Luther King was born on this day, January 15th, 1929. He only got 39 years, so MLK not quite even 100 yet.
Sad. Tragic.
No.
Fun fact, he's the same age as Anne.
I thought you were going to say Eminem or something.
No, I can't remember her name right now. You know, the famous Jewish girl who wrote the little diary and then she ends up getting killed at the end.
Anne Frank.
Anne Frank. They're the same age. They're like the same age. People forget that. That's not very far away ago.
They would have been just like pals. Other birthdays, Gamal Abdel Nasser, president of Egypt, born in 1918. Captain Beefheart. No, I did not say Beefheart. I said Beef Heart. Okay? And I think that's why childhood friend of Frank Zappa, by the way. That's why he gave himself that name you cannot say without saying fart. Captain Beefheart. Just so when they introduce him on television, every little kid in the world go, giggle. That's all. That's all the reason. That's the reason. That's his name. He was born in 1941 on this day. Bernard Hopkins, a guy who fought into his late 70s, American boxer. I'm making that up, but he did fight a long time. Was born in 1965. He's not even
I'm making
70.
that up, but he did fight a long time.
He's only 59 today, but I think he quit fighting like a couple years ago. Just a couple. I'm not exaggerating. He might still be fighting. I don't know. Drew Brees, American football player, was born this day in 1979, and El Hadji Diouf, Senegalese athlete, was born in 1981. And what day is it? So you're tired of hearing my voice? So I'll tell you what day it is. Besides the National Hat Day, it's National Bagel Day. So you can wear a bagel as a hat.
Hell yeah.
It'll look like a visor. It's a National Booch Day. Do we know what Booch Day? You know what Booch is? B-O-O-C-H? I don't know. It's Martin Luther King Jr. Day. We covered that. We know why that's his significant. And it's National Strawberry Ice Cream Day. That one I'm doing.
Your favorite flavor?
Yeah, I'm going down to the. Oh no, that place. The ice cream parlor is closed for the winter, so I have to go get it over the shelf. Kombucha, that's what I thought it was. I'm also getting some of that. So National Booch Day just covers kombucha. So.
Oh yeah.
One of my favorite gut bombs. Just dissolve that. And those are the days for today, January 15th, 2024 on Before Coffee.
All right. Well, this has been Allison here from the Netherlands. I guess I'll go look for some. Our store is closed, actually, because they're being renovated. So I guess I can't go buy some strawberry ice cream at the store either. But we will see you tomorrow for Good News Tuesday, where we're going to talk about all the good stuff that's been happening. And none of this doom, gloom, freaking 1%ers deciding our nation, our freaking economic global future for us. And here is your mic drop moment.
Mr. Chairman, is this a joke? No, seriously, is this hearing a joke? This is a committee that now cares about subpoena compliance, and we're going to hold somebody in contempt for subpoena compliance? That's really interesting because To me, it seems like you believe we all had our memories wiped 608 days ago when you failed to honor your own subpoena. You see, on May 31, 2022, as the January 6th committee was investigating the greatest crime ever committed in America, with the most arrests, the most convictions, a crime against our Congress, our Constitution, our democracy, all they wanted was for you and a few of your colleagues to cooperate, to provide any information you had. And what you all did for 608 days and counting, you didn't show up. And you want us to take this proceeding seriously, where you have an issue with somebody else's compliance with a subpoena, somebody who actually is willing to come forward publicly, something you were not willing to do, something you and Mr. McCarthy and others who were asked to testify were not willing to do. So seriously, is this a joke? If it's a joke, great. This whole Congress has been a joke, so it would be in line and on brand with what has been taking place. But I have to ask, like, how dumb do you think the American people are that you would seek to hold someone in contempt when you are 608 days, 15 hours, 21 minutes, and 47 seconds out of compliance of your own subpoena? I don't know, Mr. Chairman, if it is your practice to look the other way when crimes are committed, but it's not my practice, and it's not my colleagues' practice.
Be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and notify buttons, and follow our other channels, Toxic Alley, History of Gravy, and Scratchy Old Records.